Hello everybody. We're here today to add to our collective knowledge about creating museums. I'm Cathlin Bradley, Vice President of Partnership Strategy at Kubik Maltbie, a leading museum fabricator. I'll be serving as the moderator today. So next slide. For those of you who are not familiar with Praxis, we are a museum professionals network whose members are seasoned professionals working at the top of our industry. We share ideas, best practices, new techniques, and new technologies. We're all practitioners in many aspects of museum projects, from concept development and master planning, content creation, lighting, media, communications, and then also construction, fabrication, operations. With our combined network stretching across both the country and the industry, we provide a powerful resource to you as you contemplate the many aspects of your project. Our audience and clientele are museum leaders, exhibit designers, and architects, all vested in creating thoughtful, engaging, state-of-the-art, and timely museum experiences. Today's webinar is in support of our mission to provide compelling information, open dialogue with our community, and moving forward together. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. First, the presentation will be about 45 minutes, followed by a question and answer period that will be moderated by Paul Orselli, who's driving our slides in the background. So please, again, mute your microphone for the duration of the webinar. And please use the Zoom chat room feature for any questions you may have along the way. So again, Paul will be moderating, looking for your questions for that Q&A portion of the meeting. So let's get started. So leveraging concepts from themed entertainment. It seems like more than ever before, museums are in competition with other forms of entertainment. And just because you're not in Orlando doesn't mean there aren't dozens of things for individuals and families to do in their free time. So from escape rooms to mini golf, family fun centers to movie theaters, we have to know what would compel a potential visitor to spend their time and money in a museum. So today we've got a fantastic panel of speakers from museums and the firms that serve them, here to talk about how we can leverage ideas from themed entertainment to help museums become more relevant and appealing to a wider audience. So next slide, please. So I'll ask all of our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Bysshe. I'm the Chief Experience and Strategy Officer at the Franklin Institute of Science Center in Philadelphia.
Good afternoon or good morning. I am Brent, the Chief Operating Officer at the Henry Ford in Dearborn, Michigan, just outside Detroit.
Dan, I think you might be muted.
There
You're
you
up.
Hi, I'm Dan Picard, owner of MDSX. We're a design firm that designs attractions, museums, and location-based entertainment.
Hi, I'm Diane Lochner, principal at PGAV Destinations, where I serve as the lead in our museum and culture sector.
All right, so now that you know who we are, let's get started. So next slide. I mean, when we think of leveraging ideas from theme entertainment, let's be honest, for some of us, that might be scary. But if we as museum people can leverage some of the things themed entertainment understands about visitors, we might be able to serve a wider audience. So next slide, we have to look at what themed entertainment understands. What do they do well? They understand competition for time, earned revenue thinking, and visitor behavior, and what we can do about that. So next slide, museums aren't just competing with other museums. We have to learn how to compete with all different forms of entertainment. So Diane, do you want to tell us a little bit about, where are people going? On the next slide, you've got a great diagram that breaks it down.
Absolutely. So PGAV Destinations has been doing our Voice of the Visitor study for over 10 years now. And really, it was this idea of understanding exactly that. Where are people going? Where are they spending their leisure time? We know museums are not the only choice for that time in this highly competitive arena. So we know that visitor time is precious and they want to make the most of that time. And so this information shows us the intent to visit U.S. attractions from over 1,500 respondents that we surveyed. And you can see that, museum and cultural sites do fairly well, especially historic landmarks. They fare well against theme parks, water parks, FECs. The attraction sectors showing the highest intent to visit are just that: the landmarks, zoos, animal attractions, national and state parks. We really will dig into this a little bit further when we start to talk also about repeat visitation later in our presentation. But it's really really compelling to look at the wide attraction industry and understand that intent to visit. We also know too there might be some certain categories that are seeing different upticks based on different years. So with our semi-quincentennial coming here, there may be a little more interest in the historic landmarks and history museums.
And so looking at the next slide, Diane, I think you've broken down a bit of visitor motivations for different types of visits.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't want to just look at that visitation with a broad brush. We really want to dig deeper. And so we look at motivations and getting those respondents to tell us what's motivating their decisions, what's behind different demographic segments providing, sort of this other information to us so that we can gain insight from that. And as you can see, the strength of this data also aligns with a strength that the themed entertainment community is deeply understanding, which is their visitors. They're conducting that frequent focus testing. They're listening and engaging to their fandom, and they're gathering information. So we want to do the same informational deep dive and look at what's driving visitation so that we can not necessarily take museums and turn them into theme parks, but really use this information to think about some of those things that might drive new audiences to your institution or really begin to continue to appeal to your core audience and, maybe even capture those who aren't coming and your lapsed audience as well. So we really want to dig into this information as much as we can and look at even trends into the future. Projections really are suggesting that by 2030, younger generations will account for over half of U.S. leisure trips. And so we want to understand that, these groups really like to prioritize those unique kind of adventurous experiences. And so using that information can help us develop those opportunities in your institutions.
So now that we kind of understand, who we're competing with, who we're competing with for time, on the next slide, let's start digging a little bit into that earned revenue thinking. So first, like demystifying revenue sources, looking at revenue beyond ticket sales and memberships, considering the return on investment. If a visitor is spending a certain amount of money, there's a certain perceived value they expect to receive. Then, on the next slide, when I was working on my master's degree, this is something that was said to me the very first day of my very first class. Not for profit doesn't mean it doesn't or shouldn't make money. It's a tax designation. So in order to continue serving our mission, we have to stay in business. And to stay in business, we have to make money. To make money, we have to offer visitors something compelling. So with fewer opportunities for grants out there and, more competition for private donors, museums just have to find ways to increase that earned revenue. I think it was like last fall we heard from Carrie Reed and about earned revenue. I thought, how do we continue this valuable discussion? So that's part of why we're all here today. So Diane, on the next slide, you've broken down a bit about spending priorities that were expressed by potential visitors.
Yeah, also coming out of our Voice of the Visitor study, we really asked those respondents to talk about these priorities, and you could see food and beverage absolutely leads the list here, and it's prioritizing those food and beverage experiences. We We also know that this idea of on-site hotels and merch, are top spending categories. But again, that most significant area is the food and beverage. There's also growth in this idea of personalized experiences and the exclusive after-hour events. So really, and looking at that year over year, we know that personalized experiences and those after-hour events actually have ticked up since 2024. This was the 2025 research. So, certainly the themed entertainment industry is capitalizing on food and beverage, on themed hotels, retail, personalized experiences. And we're not advocating that you necessarily completely transform into a theme park, but again, thinking about what you all can offer relative to meeting these spending priorities is really the focus of the data.
Mm. So next, we're going to look at, visitor behavior, knowing what we know. How do we think first about diversification, then considering no margin, no mission, going back to if we don't make money, we can't continue our mission, and then finally understanding, what people are willing to pay. So now we're going to hear from our museum teams just about how are they doing this? How are they looking at revenue diversification first? So Abby, do you want to kick us off and tell us a little bit about what the Franklin's been doing?
Sure. On the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about our sales and catering business. I think as nonprofits, when we talk about diversification of revenue, we do have a lot of diversified revenue that for-profits don't have. We have endowments, we have grant funding, we have individual and corporate giving. And I think when we start to think about our earned revenue lines, we want to make sure we're creating as much diversification there as well. So at the Franklin, we really think about kind of the 24-hour museum model. And I can tell you we are living it right now in the month of May, which is our busiest time with the amount of events and then turning around and doing 2,500 school kids in the following day. So we really try and make sure that our building experience can really bring in an evening audience around corporate events and weddings. This is an audience we might not normally get through the museum in our normal visitation channels, and it gives people an entry point kind of into our experience because the exhibits and our kind of beautiful spaces are kind of part of that buyout. So we're looking at our planetarium. We have a flat floor planetarium, and about I'd say like 15 years ago, we invested in temporary seating in here. So we were able to remove the planetarium seats after a day of guest visitation and set up beautiful evening dining area in here. We have a lot of people that get married under the stars in our planetarium and then go into our Franklin Hall for the ceremony. So it's a really great opportunity to kind of have a space that you're able to activate for your visitors during the day and be able to flip that switch for evening events and be able to capitalize from a revenue perspective after your visiting hours as well. In the next slide, looking a little bit at our Franklin Memorial, this is a beautiful place that we have with 80-foot ceilings. It's pretty central to the entry point of our building, but we are able to kind of close this off and still operate the rest of the building. So we don't do this too often during the daytime, but this event here, this TED Talk was during the day. So we do have opportunities to activate kind of larger events that we may want to have during visiting hours, but still be able to operate this space as well. And I think being able to kind of identify places where both visitors and corporate events can kind of coexist during the day opens up even more opportunity. We have done full buyouts for the museum before for corporations that may want to have a family day. Obviously, we weigh that against the time of year and what day that is and how much we're bringing in from a visitor perspective. But really trying to take advantage of every opportunity to kind of bring in these corporate audiences, because I think that's a touch point with our institution. There's sponsorship opportunities there down the road. This is just another moment of connection with our brand and with our space that we wouldn't normally have with a lot of people. And then the final slide, at least in my little section here, is, evening programming. So we do 21 plus events a few times a year. We're doing around 1,500 to 2,000 people in our building for those, and really taking advantage of who we are, which is the science, which is why a lot of people come. They get to experience our exhibits without family audiences in the building, but also adding, that kind of entertainment lens. We turn our planetarium into a club with DJs and really cool visuals on the planetarium dome. We do bigger and bigger demonstrations in our atrium space. So we try and theme things out. We try and add partnerships to this and really bring an experience to the building that we wouldn't normally have during the day, really to make sure that this audience is kind of engaged. Food and beverage, definitely part of these experiences as well. So really trying to think about our building at all hours to probably the chagrin of our operations staff, but we have a nighttime staff as well, because we are literally operating this building most hours of the day.
So what is this crazy event you're showing on the screen?
This is it was called Booms and Blooms. It was our springtime science after hours events. So lots of explosions, and we partnered with the Philadelphia Horticultural Society to do some fun activations around flowers and gardening.
Very cool. So next we're going to hear about Brent, or hear from Brent about how the Henry Ford is looking at, not just their main venue, but multi-venue purchases. So Brent, do you want to tell us about that?
Yes, thank you. So if you don't know about the Henry Ford, we are a multi-venue destination. We see about 1.7 million visitors a year throughout all of our venues and programs and experiences. And we operate 4 main venues for the public. And about 15 years ago, we were mainly selling admission tickets and memberships. That was our main primary mode for our staff, whether it be front of house, call center, or on web. But we made a switch, starting to create more packages, more upsells, and just not leading with a single ticket. And by doing this, we really empowered our guest service staff that mainly greet the guests and go through the sales process, but they sell the tickets and memberships. But how do we find the best fit for the guests? Not necessarily just get them in as fast as possible, but what's their best fit? Why are they here? Are they planning to come back? Do they have multiple days to spend with us? And really try to fit the best product for that guest and their experience or what they're looking for. So we went from, again, selling a single ticket or a membership to the next slide shows how we now package what we're doing. And so we don't lead with a single venue anymore. We really lead with our memberships. We lead with an all access pass. You can come and do every single venue, every experience possible. We do both buy one, get one half off, or the main attractions. We start leading with these, not necessarily just the single venue tickets. And so really, if you're visiting from out of state and you only have one shot to come here, maybe you want the all access pass. You want to see and do everything. But we didn't do this blindly. We saw from some of our research, the more that guests engage with our experiences, the higher satisfaction they had. So yes, by doing this, we did increase revenue per guest, obviously, because we're selling multiple venues, more experiences by this, but we also drove higher satisfaction and really transitioning our staff more so from just get them into the gate as quick as possible to what's their best fit and the best product, hopefully to then spur on further higher satisfaction. So that's worked out well. And again, that's been a transition over the past 15 years that we work on quite a bit.
And tell us a little bit on the next slide about Henry Ford's diversified revenue. How does this break down?
Yep. So, back to what Abby has said too, we focus quite a bit on this of diversification. We talk about it, we track it, we monitor it to see where things are over time. Not that you can necessarily target and say exactly how we're going to get there, but how do we have a conversation, know where diversification is. So for us, we look at our mix of our revenue between earned, endowment draw, and support. But then even within earned, what are the differentiators there, whether ticket sales, memberships, food, retail, catering, retail, and the like, and really to focus on these. And then we can even dive in deeper onto the tickets. Who's buying the tickets? Is it out of state? Is it local? School field trips? And how do we diversify as much as possible? The one example we use quite a bit is 2008-9. The stock market, it is what it was. There had a lot of changes there. It's also, which is timely where we are now, gas prices soared, and so people stopped doing long vacations and stayed more local. And we also had a Lego exhibit, so it was a good end of the 2009, even given the national economy. So again, it really focuses for us on diversification, which also piggybacking what Abby said too, private events are a big business for us. We can do 8 weddings in a weekend, not atypical for us. And so whether it be weddings or corporate parties and galas, and the IRS may determine for nonprofits that private events are unrelated business transactions and income. For us, though, this is a further extension of our mission. So guests of a wedding can walk, you see these pictures here, they can walk among the exhibits and see the artifacts. They're having dinner next to artifacts. A bride and groom may have a personal connection with our institution, but they may have 200 family members coming from out of town that would have visited us without having that wedding. Or, if conventions here in Detroit, we could have thousands of people from all over the world on our museum floor interacting with us. So for us, this is not unrelated. It's just a different type of mission engagement and awareness.
And then you're doing some new things with all of your food service. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we take food pretty seriously here. For us, this is more than just a guest amenity. This is an extension of our mission. So on the next slide, this is our latest restaurant. We opened a couple of years ago, Stand 44. But we take our food principles seriously, and we adopt them into the restaurant from whether it be locally sourced, fresh, and sustainable operations there. We educate the guests on what we're doing and why. For this restaurant here, everything that we give to the guest is either recyclable or we compost on grounds and put back into our gardens and our fields. So we share stories of innovators in agriculture and the environment. That's part of our mission. We also have to live up to the standards and tell the guests why we're doing this. So this is a great example of mission alignment with our guest amenity that we're hoping to roll out across in many more restaurants that we have.
Very cool. So thanks for sharing that. So as we dig more into visitor behavior on the next slide, as we said before, like visitors have a certain expectation. They have a certain expectation of what they're paying for and what they're getting. There's a great book about managing nonprofit organizations called The Cycle. And while the focus is on performing arts institutions, it can certainly apply to museums. So on the next slide, it's kind of an overview of the principle of what we're doing. And it's looking at that mission is first driving the development of exhibitions and experiences at the museum that then goes to marketing. So that's how we're getting people excited. We're getting people interested. People come and they become like our family. So they become invested in a part of the institution. And that drives revenue. So that may be, memberships, maybe just spending on campus, but that eventually can also be donations and, contributed revenue that's going to drive that next exhibition experience and that fundraising goal. So on the next slide, how do we drive that repeat visitation? Museums really can and should be more than that place I visited on a field trip in middle school. We, as museum people, know that they're destinations and they're places we want to go when we have a free afternoon. So how do we get visitors to come back? How do we create that cycle of creating an experience, marketing it, developing this group of fans who then contribute to the earned revenue that drives the next experience? So Diane, do you want to dig a bit into the intent of visitors have to visit attractions again? So looking beyond that first visit, what does that look like for most institutions?
Sure, absolutely. So on the next slide, again, voice of the visitor data. Remember we were looking at those historic landmarks that were visited. They were at the top of the chart for intent to visit, but they drop all the way down to the last on the list for repeat visitation. I don't think that's a huge surprise, but really we like to dig into this data and understand that. So once visited, there's no real interest in returning because there's not a lot of change. There's not a lot of things happening. Of course, the zoos and aquariums get strong repeat visitation because the experience changes almost every time you're there. Baby animals always do the trick. So I know all of you might not be buying baby animals anytime soon, but again, it's this idea of creating the perception that something is happening new, always happening new at your museum. And PGAV, started out being really working in the themed entertainment industry, sort of as that first of our destination practice. And we know that themed entertainment is really good at updating and investing in new product and also updating their storytelling, sort of telling new chapters in their storytelling moments. You all can think about some examples across the themed entertainment world. But that provides this opportunity for your institutions to think about, creating a new story overlay to something that your guests see as their favorite exhibit, or supplementing a learning opportunity, sort of creating a tangential experience, kind of a connectivity or a deeper dive into something that you have in your museums. One of our clients, the Biltmore Estate, which I would sort of define as a for-profit cultural site, did a clever thing. They found traveling exhibits that connected to their particular stories and their time period. They brought in the fashions of Downton Abbey as one opportunity, and that allowed them to connect to whole new audiences, those who loved fashion, or those who were completely really enchanted by the series. Gave people a reason to visit again if they had already done the house tour there at Biltmore. And they also did it with the Titanic exhibit, which actually had a connection to members of the Vanderbilt family. They were supposed to be on the Titanic. And so it created that kind of storytelling moment that was really intriguing, and again, brought people back to see something different. And then, of course, they came to the site and spent money in the traveling exhibit and some food and beverage revenue and some other things. So finding these things that really can continue to enhance your story or provide new opportunities allows you to think about that repeat visitation.
So next, I think I'm going to call on Abby to tell us a little bit about what the Franklin's been doing. I know you and Dan have been working together for a number of years now to drive that repeat visitation. So what's happening at your museum?
Yeah, so I think just overall speaking, the Franklin Institute has a fairly localized audience. So keeping things fresh and new is important to us. I know that some places that have kind of a larger tourist audience may not need to refresh and have as much temporary content as we do. And kind of twofold for us, we're definitely constantly improving the value proposition of the base experience. So that permanent experience needs to be taken care of as well. We want to make sure that that's delivering. And that's one thing we want to make sure is consistently good. And then we're looking at ways to kind of insert urgency and more temporary experiences into that permanent experience. So the next slide showcases our Halloween activation we did called Franklin Fright. This was something we actually invested in the capital investment, and we ended up doing this for 4 seasons.
Wow.
This is post-pandemic. It ended up becoming kind of expensive to maintain as far as installation and operating costs, but we basically had all of these themed areas, and we did indoor trick-or-treating. So we brought doors and houses inside and allowed kids to come in and trick-or-treat indoors, as well as experience some great science shows and our great museum, and kind of overlay that. And this really gave us not only a daytime visitation activation, but we were able to activate it for adult audiences in the evening. We did this on weekends in October, and it really was able to kind of compete with historic data around like what a traveling exhibit would do. It was quite strong from an attendance perspective. We tried this with winter programming as well. We did not see as much success. That's just a very busy market in Philly. There's a lot of stuff to do, like outdoor shopping and trees and ice skating and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know that our value proposition was as strong from a winter perspective, but I think the combination of like Halloween is such a great science tie in a lot of ways, and I think that indoor trick-or-treating, a place that was safe and friendly and fun to come and trick-or-treat, was really a draw as well. So this was a fun one for us. The next slide, as I'm sure all of you know, the traveling exhibit business. This is definitely kind of a longer temporary. So we host these around 6 months. So not as urgent, but still provides some urgency. The topics that we explore in this space really vary. Things like Art of the Brick and Legos, to the Harry Potters and more theme entertainment style experiences. So we really run the gamut as far as kind of things that tie more directly to our existing audience and things that are really bringing in incremental attendance, and our experiences that are bringing in people that would likely not step through our doors otherwise. So we really use traveling exhibits as kind of, I always call it like the Trojan horse. It's the thing that we get excited, people get excited, they come in, it includes the general admission. They're here for, 3.5 to 4 hours. 45 minutes to an hour of that is the special exhibition. The rest of the time they're engaging with our product in the Science Center. So it's a great way to kind of add that extra incremental attendance. And the slide after this is just a quick note that one thing we just designed with MDSX, the Universal Theme Parks exhibition that's open right now. If you're at AAM, you can come and see it. But this was kind of our step into really wanting to take the reins around storytelling in our traveling exhibitions and kind of combine that kind of IP that we know does so well in the market with a more kind of science and industry story, really talking about the careers and the skills that go into making the theme park industry come to life. So again, there are ways to kind of tie to the storytelling and mission of the organization, but also stay commercial enough to really drive that incremental attendance.
So Brent, you're doing this at Henry Ford as well with the seasonal events, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we do both temporary and then seasonal. But for us, we've really leaned in heavily on the holidays. The fourth quarter is pretty big for us. We've had our Halloween program. It's been beloved for 30, 40 years. We did trick-or-treating, but when COVID hit, we pivoted and we removed the trick-or-treating element from that and leaned into our experiences that you're able to offer throughout Greenville Village. So now the program is 16 nights in the month of October. Last year we had over 90,000 people visit the program. We had the scale and infrastructure of Greenville Village. How do we leverage this? And each year we try to raise the bar of the experiences that we have, the elements, the vignettes that we put on. But this is very much a family-friendly, obviously, event. But it's based on the mission of our artifacts, our collection, our experiences. So we didn't want to just bring in some experience that didn't fit who we are. We tell the Ichabod Crane story and the Headless Horseman of historic, tales and things like that are rooted in history, not just something. So this is very mission forward for us. It's just a different way to activate and engage. Similar on the next slide, we've done pretty well with holiday nights. We do 18 nights in the month of December. But again, we decorate historic structures as the families would have in the time period that we're interpreting it to. So people can take a step back in time and see different expressions of holidays and how they would have celebrated. And we do ice skating, we do fireworks, caroling, fire pits, food and beverage. So this program started around 2000. We had about 10,000 people that year. And again, we're closing in on 100,000 people over the month of December.
Wow, that's
so
crazy.
This is a big push and a big fan favorite. Also, it's mainly a local audience because it's in the month of December at night. And we see huge repeat visitations of families. Families are in town. They'd love to come back for this. So this is a great program that we put on. It's beloved. There's another picture on another slide, the next slide, for again, just different types of experiences. We try to hit all age ranges for this program. So whether it be a date night of a young couple or a family, from grandparents to grandkids, I try to make different elements accessible for everybody.
Very cool. So now that we have an idea of how you're all keeping things fresh, another thing we've talked about was like, how do we activate the visitor in the experience? So Dan, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you're activating visitors when you create these experiences?
Yeah, a little bit of what we do is really start with outside voices as much as possible.
Mm,
We love the workshop philosophy. Like, we love to invite people, not to intimidate them. And
mm,
one of our big things is the best experiences start with listening to the community and not presenting to them. So like we love
mm,
to get them inside and like just talk to them just as people and just really understand what is motivating them to come outside these days, because they have so much
mm,
technology in their home. It's like we really want to understand what is it, and talking about some of the things that Brett and Abby were talking about, like these activations that are special, that are different from just like hanging around your home. It's like something that brings the community together. I think those are one of those things, and it starts with those outside voices of designing anything that brings the community members together, and like people who are not of the institution, we really love, just to really get that big understanding. And a lot of it is just asking questions like, what do you care about, what excites you, what would make you feel make this relevant to you.
mhm.
We really want to get into the DNA of what guests are looking for.
And you show a little bit of that happening in real life on the next slides, right? Is you're talking to kids, families, who all are you? Tell us about this workshop and how you do that.
Yeah, a lot of us, we want to work a lot at just really getting people to open up, and a lot of what you see in these slides are like is us just really getting to the brass tacks of just like making people feel comfortable, getting them to laugh, getting them to really
Mhm,
engage with us, so we can get some of that core DNA out of them. And some of it is done in a very analog way, but then we distill everything in a very data focused way, so we can actually see what those metrics are that are shaping these experiences. And like you said, we work in attractions and museums, and we use a lot of our attraction knowledge that we get from like designing these great experiences in museum experiences. And I think everything utilizes that same first step of like identifying your guests and making sure you can build experiences exclusively for them. And if you go to the next slide, a lot of some of the things we talk about is like community, not as a through line, not as a box to check, because I feel like
mhm,
sometimes in this industry there's a lot of people who just like, hey, we just want to check the box. We really love the community so much that our team looks like the community. So like it's a
mhm,
very open and honest conversation with them. And
mm,
the goal is really to make things feel relevant, accessible, and fundamentally like really human. And
mm,
a lot of what we're talking about is lowering the barrier, like keep the conversations as informal as humanly possible, know what specific outcomes we're looking for, but like I said, the key is invitation and not intimidation. And
mm,
but one of the things I always talk about is just try not to pedestalize the conversation. It's like you'll never see it,
mhm,
like, uh, in front of like a podium, right? Like, we like to get like right down, sit in their seats, talk to them, like just really like showcase that we're just someone in the community that just wants to talk to them, like a family member or a friend who's really just trying to get
mhm.
get to know them on a personal human level.
So getting beyond that, museums aren't for me attitude.
Yeah, I would say we we do our best doing that, because I say this whole holistically, like people are very knowledgeable of like the informal conversation where you're just trying to mind them of stuff.
Mm,
You really got to
mhm,
spend a lot of time with the community, and you can't just go like, hey, I just came here one day and now
mm,
I have like like a fact checks of like things to like cross off. We really spend a lot of time. We come once, we come twice, we come three times, and then a lot of it is we bring the community along the design process, from programming to concept to schematic design to DD to like installation. we want to show them that we want to connect with them to develop experiences that they had a hand in and showcase that they had a part in making these experiences, because I feel like that's how things become really more like how guests become attached to things, at least in the museum community, is like they feel like wasn't a cash grab, it was really a conversation back and forth.
So on the next slides, you kind of like break this, well, I guess this process. Um, can you tell us about the outcomes for some of the recent exhibits you've worked on?
Yeah, like a lot of these are examples from the Franklin Institute. And a big core message for us is we want the technology to serve the story and never design technology forward experiences just for the sake of it. So we want to connect with people. We want to build real-time feedback loops. We want to design the agency and not just the spectacle. And we want to create a dynamic variability. Like systems should adapt so that each experience feels personal and unique. And then we really love making the interaction intuitive. Like you can just get into it and just like understand how to use it and get the content or the outcome that we're looking for as quickly as possible. And we love real-time feedback in the experiences as much as possible.
So tell us a little bit about Wondrous Space on the next slide. I mean, this looks like a really very cool, like full body interactive.
Yeah, this one was really great because we worked on Wondrous Space, and in it we really wanted to really get into that wonder and awe of space. And this one we did this full body interactive that allowed guests to become the center of gravity and then pull planets and different astral like objects towards them. And this one was really fun because the main thrust of this interactive was we wanted people to have fun in this topic of gravity. And I think one of the big things that I always stress is we want to have people like remember and have this like spark and have this kind of like memory of like, oh, I did this thing, and this connection to the fun as a connection to a topic. And in this full body experience, I think anyone who ever interacts with it, they really have that fun to learning pipeline. Like fun isn't the opposite of learning, it's the gateway to it. And we love crafting like these moments and ask, what is the one thing that visitors will say to their friend when they leave? Is like, hey, was that cool? Was that awesome? Was that neat? And a big thing is to tag right on top of that is like, what is that water cooler knowledge that they spread because they had fun doing that activity?
So how about, again, thinking about technology, how are you making small upgrades? Maybe an institution can't do a huge overhaul, but how are you doing small things to make existing experiences more interesting?
I think a lot of things we always say is like there's a lot of like really good analog ideas that was done in the past, and they just needed like a little bit of a refresh with like a little bit of modern sensibility to make it seem cool. And this is one of them. This one's called Gravity Well. This is like an analog with a digital overlay. It's like you throw this marble inside this like funnel and you see it spin around and it gets into the center. And like this is I think like a 15-20-year-old off the shelf Gravity Well exhibit. It was a fan favorite, and we added a IR infrared overlay, and now the balls are tracked, and they showcase those orbital paths, those little streaks you see there. And then when they collide, they make this like cool like animation that like you can see them radiate outward. And again, there's another one when guests start throwing those marbles in there. There's just so much fun and energy to it. And one of the great things that Abby mentioned, and this was one of our design thrusts, we wanted to make all the didactics and the graphics like very, very large, but very short and really obtainable to remember. And one of the great things about this is there's so much joy happening around this Gravity Well that like Abby once mentioned, like, look, they're actually reading the didactics around there. And I think it's that connection to
that's magic right there. They actually read something.
I mean, it never happens. It's a miracle, really.
You have won.
And I think when you're having fun and they're learning and they read and they don't do that that often, when you connect it all together, you get that magic that magic experience. So that's what the Gravity Well was all about.
And then I think the final example that we were going to share from the Franklin is this human body systems. So this is like a much deeper personalization.
Yeah, we wanted to do a human body systems experience, and this is a walkthrough digital display that uses computer vision to see you and scan you and place you inside the circulatory or respiratory systems. And visitors see themselves, their actual body and their actual mobility is represented in the experience. There was purposeful inclusion designed into this. After a lot of community conversations, we really ensure that visitors in wheelchairs or walkers were depicted as they are, not standing. So there was a lot of feedback that we got and loved, and they loved it that we didn't just take the experience because it was easy, but we had everyone we had everyone standing up. What we did was there you could see yourself if you're in a wheelchair in this experience, you would see yourself in a wheelchair in the circulatory respiratory systems. And we had a couple of guests when they first experienced it, especially kids, they really there was just that energy of joy of seeing themselves as they were in the experience, and they didn't have to go to a corner or someplace else that was just the ADA experience. We try our best to build it all inside so everyone has the experience the way in an authentic way. And I think the lesson here is like the community driven conversation is what helped this become a purposeful experience for everyone, not just the average visitor. And that's what we love a lot when we get those phone calls, those pictures from our clients saying like, hey, thank you, look how happy the guests are, look how engaged they are. Just really is extremely meaningful to us.
Cool. So looking not just at personalization, but on the next slide, and again, bear with us. I think we're getting close on time, so we'll be mindful of that, but we've got some really cool stuff to share. Something we as museum professionals have that other types of venues don't is authentic objects. We have artifacts and authentic experiences that can't be had elsewhere. So Diane, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you did with the St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame? Like, visitors are actually able to engage physically with real artifacts.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a great opportunity, again, as you said, learning from themed entertainment, this idea of personalization and memory making and photo ops. They're all really great thoughts. And so we wanted to translate those, but we wanted to use the strength of the collection that the Cardinals have. And one opportunity we sort of realized when we were working with the curators there is that they have an extensive collection of real bats that have been used by players. And so we really worked with them to think creatively about how we could change this idea of, instead of having that sort of artifact behind glass, we wanted to bring it out to be able to touch and hold. And so in this particular exhibit, it's called Holding History. We actually allow visitors to select from a collection of 6 different bats. You can see them in the case there, but actually you get to put on gloves and choose your bat. The staff open up the case and you get to hold a bat, and you could be Yadier Molina or Stan the Man Musial or Lou Brock, and you get to hold the bat and step up to the plate and get your photo op. And so it's just a really great way to engage people in not only having them choose who they want to become for a moment or two, but really engage the senses and allow visitors to hold these authentic objects. And then on the next slide, we also, again, this extensive collection on the far lower left, the extensive collection just goes on and on, but we created these drawers behind some of the artifact cases where individuals, based on their interest, can really take a deeper dive into some of the additional material that they're interested in, and really get them to continue to engage in the stories that they want to continue to pursue within the museum.
And so next, Abby, I think you were going to tell us a little bit about this huge overhaul of the heart. It's not just an exhibit. It is an artifact that people can go inside. Do you want to tell us just briefly about the heart and how you've dealt with this unique, historic, authentic experience?
Sure. This was a temporary exhibit that came to the Franklin in the 1950s as a paper mache walk-through heart. It was supposed to be a 6-month experience, and it's been with us ever since. And we fiberglassed over this item. It is in our collection, even though people do walk through it, so we can't do anything to the kind of actual structure or the interior of it. And this was part of our Body Odyssey exhibition, and we really wanted to kind of modernize the experience around this. It's also not ADA friendly, so thinking about how we can add an experience that is accessible to everybody to this. So if you go to the next slide, we made it even more a star of the show. So we had a local street artist redo all of the paint, someone who grew up in Philly and knew what he was touching and how important it was to make sure it looked great, because this remains in the memory of every Philadelphian who's grown up in this city. And then we added kind of a lighting and sensor experience overlay to this. So the stations you see in front there are things that record your heartbeat. So you are able to record your heartbeat and send it to the giant heart, and then your heartbeat becomes the giant heart's heartbeat. And it's done through lights and movement and sound. So just a really nice moment that kind of connects our guests even further to this iconic item, and also just added, that level of accessibility of experience.
And so, Brent, I think, the Henry Ford also has some of these very large artifacts that people can engage with. Do you want to tell us a bit about the Rosa Parks bus?
Yes. I mean, we have examples of using touchscreens, VR, virtual reality apps, things like that. But certain situations we talk about that sometimes simple technology can have the most impact, and to not lose sight of that in certain situations. So in 2001, we acquired the Rosa Parks bus and completely overhauled it. From what the condition it was, incorporated into with Liberty and Justice for All. And we didn't want to lose the authenticity of the artifact or the moment of being in the bus and sitting inside that bus. And so we just use a very simple technology of a speaker and a button for the presenter to hit to hear Rosa Parks' voice describe her own story. And so sometimes we talk about different experiences, what's appropriate given what you're trying to convey. And so sometimes you can use a lot of technology, or sometimes just keep it simple and keep it authentic. So I just want to use this example, just kind of something, again, a speaker and a button really goes a long way.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing. I think we are, given that we have only a few minutes left, going to go on to questions. So Paul, if you want to head to the final slide and start moderating our Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that excellent presentation, everyone. I made some notes and looking at the chat. One thing to start us out, I'm wondering, you mentioned future trends and audiences skewing younger. What does that really mean in terms of how we can leverage those younger audiences?
Well, who wants to start?
Do you mean younger, like millennial, Gen Z? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, we're looking at what types of programs and events will engage with them. I know if you haven't used the Trojan horse example, but what are the different appetites and ways to engage? We now have in a museum 2 galleries that rotate new exhibitions, temporary in our own collections. We rotate out different platforms. So we're just trying to figure out different ways of, we were founded almost 100 years ago, of just exhibits that people would come just to see a permanent exhibit. What are the different ways to engage now? So we're just trying to figure out new types of programs and different events that will bring them in. Again, get them interested in us, and then see what else we have to offer. Because just to me, just constantly tweaking what are those types of events and engagement points?
Yeah, I was going to add for us, it's a little tough because we do have quite a robust family audience. So it's not like all of a sudden we're going to expect 20-year-olds to show up on a Saturday when we're
Right.
bustling with, 5,000 families. So I think through our redesigning of the exhibits, we're trying to modernize our look and feel outside of moving away from that children's museum look into a much more sophisticated design aesthetic. Also thinking about things like bringing our collections to the forefront in our collections gallery, which we had not done in the past. So making it easier to turn the building from a family experience to an evening adult experience, or whether there be happy hour hours or however we want to do that, but we'll have a product that speaks to that audience a lot better than we have in the past. So that's kind of our goal. So we're able to leverage those opportunities.
And also one thing is it's like leveraging design to be the gateway for many groups, because like if you can level up your design aesthetic for like an 18 to 24-year-old, normally, and a lot of the research we've done, a 8 to 10-year-old will level up to that 18-year-old's design. They'll look at that and go, that's something I want to do. It normally doesn't go backwards like
Right. That's the cool
20-year-old.
thing the big kids are doing.
Yeah. So make it in a way that like they want to be in the space. It is very cool, it's very engaging, and afford them the opportunity to use that as the springboard for learning.
I'll just throw in the visitor research component again, since I got to talk about that quite a bit today. It's also continuing to think about the next generations. We got Gen Alpha research coming out, as we speak, and really understanding again some of their motivations behind how they fit into all those other visitor motivations that we looked at earlier. So you just gotta keep our learning process going with each new generation.
Right, because those kids are maybe experiencing some of these museums with a school group, but we want them to go home and bring their family back and tell their parents how cool it was, right?
Super.
Most definitely.
Well, I feel compelled to ask the inevitable AI question here. So I'm wondering how and if AI intersects in any of this conversation in terms of your work.
I think it's very useful in getting data and like, understanding your guests a little bit more on an intimate mental level. I think that it's extremely useful in that way.
Yeah, I think also though for our world, knowing what AI does and doesn't do. So I read this great little meme the other day. It's like, I really want AI to do my laundry and dishes so I can write and create art. So it's like that fine line of like, how do we use AI for these tasks that are useful to us, but we are still the human creative thinkers.
And we're having a lot of conversations about what is AI, and AI is such a broad term. It's like using the word digital.
Right.
So how do you dissect, like what's employee productivity? What are you doing for data? What are you doing for guest experience? What are you doing for collections? How do you start to break it down to have meaningful conversations and what makes sense on the employee productivity side versus others?
Well, I think we are just over time. So I don't know that there are any other questions, but if not, we can get going. But thank you everyone for joining us. We hope this was useful, helpful. You'll be able to access the presentation. Please feel free to share it out if this would be helpful to others in the industry. So thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.